Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where some people truly believe it's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got greedy family members, Facebook marketplace beggars, tweaker Karens, entitled landlords, and one OP tells a crazy story that involves their whole family and some money, guys. It's a wild one today. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened a few years ago. I was selling a nice marble table on Facebook Marketplace in mint condition for $1,500. After a few back and forths dealing with lowballing offers, I finally agreed to $1,200, and I set up a time and a place for them to pick it up. The day of, the husband and wife show up 30 minutes late. I can see that they're driving a car, and there's no way that this 70-inch table is going to fit. After inspecting the table and trying to find anything wrong with it, they could only comment that the veining might make the table not as strong or something. I just ignore whatever comment they made and asked if they're gonna take the table. That's when the Karen says, "Oh, well, we'll have to rent a van to get it to our place, and that's gonna cost about $250. So I can offer $900 for the table with that considered." At that, I respond, "The price is $1,200 as agreed. It doesn't matter to me if you have to rent a van." And this is when the husband chimes in and he says, "How are you set for your furnace?" I respond, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" And I'm clearly confused at this moment and thinking that these people must be insane. The husband then goes on and says, "I can give you a discount if you give us the table. I'm a furnace installer." I hold firmly and I say, "My price is $1,200. I'm not entertaining offers for furnace installations." That's when the husband then says, "Okay, well, it doesn't seem like you're being reasonable. We have to pay to move it and you should cover our costs." At that point, I just said no and I showed them the door. A week later, I end up selling the table for $1,400. I've encountered plenty of people not bringing enough money, but this was certainly on another level. The audacity of those people, guys. And this is why I avoid selling on Marketplace at all costs, and over the years have just asked friends and family if they want stuff for free, because you have to deal with these kinds of people. And seriously, did they really try to get a $250 discount, and when that didn't work, they offered a discount on a furnace installation instead of the $1,200? Again, the audacity of some people never ceases to amaze me. Gotta give them props for trying, right? So this happened not too long ago. I was at a stop sign around lunchtime when this woman on the corner comes running over to the passenger side of my car, screeching about needing to get home. I was driving a convertible with the top down. The woman didn't wait for an answer. She just swings a leg over the door and she plops herself into the passenger seat, saying she would give me $5 for gas. The woman told me she lived nearby, in a low-income public housing project. I knew where it was. It was about 1.5 miles away. The woman was pretty tweaky, like clearly on something, but somehow she seemed fairly harmless. The woman never even glanced at me. She didn't seem to be plotting something, and she never said a word. So here's the part where you can all give me crap for my stupidity. I figured it was easier to just go 1.5 miles out of my way than to deal with the drama of trying to get her out of my car. My backup plan for carjackings was to drive into the first telephone pole I see, or rear-end the first police car I spot, because airbags for the win. In my mind, it's better to deal with the aftermath of that than have your body dumped into an alley. So I get to the housing project. It was broad daylight, and I was in front of the main entrance with people around, so I didn't feel any danger. The woman then hopped out and she ran off. And here's the thing, she didn't even give me the money. And honestly, I wouldn't have even taken the $5 even if she offered, which she didn't, surprise, surprise. but mostly, I was pissed at the fact that she left the passenger door open as far as it could go. I of course get around to close it when this older guy in a silver pickup truck pulls up. He pulls his window down and he asked, did I know that woman and if I was okay? I replied, no idea who she is, but yeah, I'm fine, thanks. He then explained that he'd been coming down the street behind me when out of nowhere he saw that homeless-looking woman jump into my car. He followed me to see if anything sketchy was gonna go down. I was pretty stunned by the thoughtfulness, and I told him that, wow, thanks, that's a pretty awesome thing you just did. He then said I'd have punched that woman right out of my truck. He then pointed a finger in my face and he sternly lectured me like I was one of his kids. He said to me, don't you ever do that again, you hear me? To which I say, yes sir. Of course, he was absolutely correct. And if it ever happens again, let's hope not, I might just take his advice on the punching part. But just try to imagine the entitlement of jumping into a stranger's car all because you need a ride. And honestly, if she picked the wrong vehicle, it could have turned out a lot worse for her. Yeah, that stranger's advice is right on the point, guys. Do not ever do something like that ever again. Like a person who's clearly tweaking on drugs, asking you to drive them somewhere, like that could have ended up quite differently for OP. And for OP to think, oh, it's easier to drive for a mile than to cause a ruckus, well, it's easier to cause a ruckus than to potentially not go home because of something sketchy going down. Also, like, what if it wasn't a mile? What if she's like, drive me across town? Then what, OP? But yeah, thank goodness that Good Samaritan was there though, and had OP's back. Seems like a great guy to have your back when things get a bit too wild. This happened 2 months ago when I moved into a new apartment. It's a small complex with 4 units, and honestly, I love how quiet it was until the landlord's sister decided to show up. At first, I didn't know who she was. She just started showing up randomly and watering the plants in the courtyard, and walking into the laundry room without knocking and giving unsolicited advice on how I should properly park my car. The list goes on and on. One day, I'm cooking in my kitchen and I hear the screen door open. I come out and find this woman in my backyard. Shared space, but still, she's moving my flower pots around. So I politely asked her what she was doing, and the woman goes, oh, I'm the landlord's sister. I help him decorate this place. These don't look good here at all. They have to be moved. That's when I told her I rented that unit and I would prefer it if she didn't move my stuff without asking. She then rolls her eyes and she literally said to me, well, you are just a tenant. My brother owns this property. I'm family. The next week, she knocks on my door and she asked if I can move out early because she wants to rent the place for her son who's, quote, starting over after a breakup. Mind you, I had just signed the lease and I'd been there barely 2 months. I of course got pissed off and I asked her to leave. I then called the landlord and reported what was happening. The landlord was horrified. He apologized profusely and told me that his sister had no authority whatsoever, to not listen to her at all, and she wasn't even supposed to be on the property without notice. He had to change the lock on the courtyard gate because she kept letting herself in. Some people really think that being family gives them a license to act weird and entitled. Yeah, I would definitely say so. Like, some people literally think that being family means you can do whatever you want. And for her to boss around the tenants living there all because her brother owns the place is quite ridiculous if you ask me. Like, that is some crazy power tripping. I'm just glad the landlord recognized that his sister was way over the top and told OP not to worry about it. Like, it's not often, but it's always nice to hear that some landlords are on the renter's side. So reading all of these stories reminds me of a moment in my life that, looking back, just seemed entitled as all heck. I have 2 aunts on my mom's side of the family. My mother kept up contact with them when she moved to England, and after a few years, she finally managed to convince them both to come to England with us as well. One of them's lovely, but the other, well, I could probably write a book about all the crazy things she did after moving in with us. Eventually, both my nice aunt and the crazy aunt move out, as they were only staying with us until they could get things settled. Also, mostly because my mom finally lost patience with crazy aunt, just making life difficult for us all. Now for the entitled part. I'm at university, and I have a job teaching English on the weekends to make some extra money. One day, nice aunt calls me and she asked about some English lessons as her and crazy aunt are having trouble with theirs, and it's getting in the way. I agree, and since their house is en route from university to work, I arranged to stop by after work for a 2-hour session each Saturday and Sunday. Nice aunt offers to pay, but I refuse. So the first session rolls around. Crazy aunt barely says a word, but nice aunt makes good progress. Nice aunt offers to pay again, but I refuse, at which point she then offers to make me dinner as a way to pay me back for my time. Now, I've not eaten much that day, so I agree, and she does. Crazy aunt shoots her a bit of a dirty look, but I brush it off. This turns into routine for a couple of weeks. I would go tutor them for a couple of hours, after which I would eat dinner with them. And then, one day out of the blue, I get a call from nice aunt that goes something like this. She calls me and says, "Hi, is everything okay? Thank you so much for the lessons. They've been really helpful." I respond, "Sure, everything's fine. You've gotten much better. Is next weekend still okay?" That's when she says, "Well, that's why I called. Crazy aunt doesn't like you taking our food." I respond, "What?" She then goes on and says, "She says you're coming to teach, not to eat with us. And if you really want to eat, you can bring your own food." At this point, crazy aunt overhears this and she pulls the phone from nice aunt. And she says, "Hello? Yeah, I have a problem with you right now that we need to get settled." I respond, "Okay, I don't see what the problem is. Like, what's going?" She then interrupts and says, "I don't like you eating our food for free. We have to buy that food. If you come to our house to teach, that's all you should do. Why are you eating our food?" Hearing that, I was of course taken aback. I respond, "Well, okay, I can eat before I arrive, but it'll mean that I can only teach for an hour and a half or so." She then says, No, you need to teach for the same time as you do now. Just leave your job earlier if you need to eat." At that point, I just thought, yeah, no. I just hung up the phone and I end up cutting her out from there on out. I'm sorry, but I'm not losing time at the job that's helping me get through university for someone who feels her sister offering to make me dinner is too demanding of me. I'm sorry if it's not entitled as some of the posts you read, but this was really irritating, and it's a memory I thought I'd share. Listen, an entitled person is an entitled person, and that crazy Karen aunt was way over the top, and I thoroughly enjoyed that post. But yeah, as somebody who grew up in a family that's basically always pushing food on anyone that comes over and always feeds people, I just can't believe how some can be so petty over something like that, especially when OP's refusing to take any money. Like, to me, that's the least they could have done for OP. Like, you teach us English, I'll cook you dinner. It's only fair, right? Guys, let me know your thoughts on this post. Okay, so this happened decades ago, and I finally decided to share. This involves my grandma and her nasty brother getting what they deserve. So a bit of background on my grandma. My grandma was the result of her parents having an oopsie before marriage, forcing my great-grandparents to get married. Growing up, there was a lot of resentment towards my grandma, and a large amount of abuse, which did carry over to my grandma's brother, who was the golden child, and I know as great uncle. My grandma was pretty much told as soon as she was old enough that she needed to get married and move out, so she would no longer be their problem. As soon as my grandma turned 18, she got married into her own abusive marriage, where he was a drunk, took all of her money, while contributing absolutely nothing. My grandma ends up leaving him and went back home, where her parents, well, they didn't treat her any better. During this time in her life, her own parents made it aware that once she was married, she was her husband's problem, and they changed their wills so the only person getting any money should they die would be her brother. My grandma's of course upset, but she accepts it anyways. 10 years later, my grandma's remarried to my grandfather, who treats her right, but they struggle to get pregnant. Her brother's married to his wife, who's gloating that they have a perfectly healthy baby. Blah blah blah. Just after the last gloat, my grandma gives birth to my mom, and both her brother and his wife worry about the inheritance after great-grandfather's health takes a swan dive. Great-grandfather passes away, and apart from a cheap pocket watch that my grandma gets, she's left out of the will. Her brother is literally gloating how he can afford a dream house, cars, all that stuff. Fast forward years, and my great-grandma's health is in real decline, and my grandma's brother and his wife are talking about divorce as they spent all the money left to them, and her own parents' money. My grandparents were freaking out at this point about her declining health, and making sure that she's not in pain, while the brother's wife openly says that she hopes she does pass away as she needs more cash. Classy people, I tell ya. Anyways, great-grandmother, before she passes away, tells my grandma that she hadn't wished to change her will to leave her out, but she had been forced to, and then handed her a wad of money. Her brother and his wife hadn't been there at all, so when they finally show up, they're taking claim to items and saying nothing must leave the house until the will is sorted. And here comes the fun part. My grandma is the only one to try and sort out some of the funeral for her, and hoped that the will would allow her some cash to bury her. But as you've guessed it already, her brother and his wife make it clear that they're in charge of the will, and anything to be passed around. They take charge of the funeral, pretty much shoving my grandma out, and to add insult to injury, shortly after the service, they inform my grandma that she had been left nothing in the will. My grandma did try and see if she could fight them to get anything, but pretty much gave up and just cut complete contact with them. So fast forward a giant time skip, and I'm 10 years old, going on 11, with no idea who my grandma's brother and his wife are. All I know is they send us a Christmas card once a year, and occasional birthday card. But my grandma's health is really deteriorating. My grandma pretty much knew that her time was up, and she had spoken more openly about her upbringing, her family's life, and who grandma's brother was. It turns out her brother had tried to reconnect when he knew my grandma's health had really gone downhill once again. Anyways, my grandma happens to suffer a stroke at 88 years old, and along with other health issues, she realized that she's coming to an end quicker than we all wanted to accept. She made my parents aware that under no circumstances that we're to accept her brother and his wife into our lives, as the wife had been trying to call her more often under the impression of wanting to ensure my grandma had a will. Shortly after my grandma recovers from the stroke, her brother visits her and attempts to pressure her into changing her will to ensure that he's made in charge, as in his opinion, your daughter will not be able to cope with the pressures of planning your funeral and sorting out the house sale, so leave it to me. My grandma had apparently agreed, and she was only stopped from doing so when she asked my dad to take her to an appointment to change the will. She told my dad her master plan, and my dad takes her to the appointment. So fast forward to the end of August, and my grandma's health rapidly declines in 24 hours, to the point that she had to be rushed to the hospital. She manages to survive another 24 before she passes away. My mom had informed her brother of his sister's condition, but they refused to visit at all. And this sends my mom into a meltdown that she was all alone in the world with 2 young kids having to cope with planning a funeral. 3 days later is actually the first time I meet my grandma's brother and his wife in the flesh. They wanted to visit to discuss my grandma with my mom. Now this part's a little blurry to me, however, I do remember them being sad about her passing away, and he did play with mine and my sister's Lego blocks with me, while his wife questioned why grandma had died so soon, and also if we knew if there was any cash left to them. My mom, while upset, answered as many questions as she could before forcing them out as they were upsetting her further. So my grandma's funeral came, and after the service is when things finally blow up. We had a small get-together afterwards where people came around to celebrate my grandma's life. A lot of her friends made big deals out of me and my sister by giving us a memory box of possessions that reminded them of my grandma. They had just been given to us when Grandma's brother starts boasting that he has power of the will, and they plan to take a certain amount for all the stress it caused on them. But joke's on them though, my dad asked them in which copy of the will was this the case, to which they reply, the last copy she ever made. See, if you remember from further back up, my grandma had changed her will with my dad being there, and that's when my dad pulls out the power move. He told Grandma's brother that there had been changes made to the will, and that gave my mom and dad full control. On top of that, a small amount was to be set aside for me and my sister, and the grand total of £10 was to be given to great aunt and uncle. Oh, and if they contested the will, they got nothing at all. As you can imagine, being told that, they blew their lids. They start swearing, upsetting the kids in the room, and I remember being shuffled upstairs as my mom and dad kicked her out. Anyway, they contest the will, and they lose the grand total of £10 left to them both. My mom by then had sold off a lot of possessions that she didn't want to keep, and the house sale had pretty much been finalized by the time her brother came begging for items to remember my grandma. My mom told us afterwards that they kept begging for a small amount of money that was rightfully theirs, as surely his sister wanted to leave him something in the will. My mom just laughed him out of her house, and that was the last time we actually saw either of them. 9 years after being little to no contact, my grandma's brother died in the summer, for us to find out on a Christmas card. Don't worry though, he was surrounded by loved ones, as great aunt so gracefully put it, but neither of them had much money. For his funeral, his kids had to beg and borrow the cash to afford his funeral, and in the Christmas card, they asked if we could give them some money. My mom didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her uncle, but she did get to add to a lovely bonfire instead, using the card. The moral of the story is you may not get to choose your family, but you do, however, get to choose who you call family. And with family like that, guys, who needs enemies, right? I just love how old grandma wasn't as slow as her brother and wife seemed to think. With that said, it's always tough to hear how some people get at each other's throats when it comes to a death in the family. Like someone literally just passed away and people are talking about money and possessions. Like seriously, do some people only care about that stuff to the point where they wish their sibling would pass so they could get stuff? It's freaking disgusting. Like great uncle and his wife were nasty people. And speaking of nasty people, listen to this last post, guys, where the mood is a bit brighter and the audacity is wild. When I moved in with my now husband, I decided to sell my air mattress since we now had a guest bedroom with a real bed. I posted it on Nextdoor before I realized that my local Nextdoor was an utter crap show. I had the air mattress for a year or two, only used it twice, and I bought it for $175, so I listed it for a fair $50. I also put in the listing that I've never had any issues with it, which is true. That's when a woman emails me and she asked if she could come see it. I agree, and she asked me to make sure it was set up so she could check it out. Fair enough. So I inflated it and it was ready to go when she arrived. The woman spent no less than 25 minutes testing it out. She was lying on it, rolling around, asking me to be quiet so she could listen for air leaks. All was good, and I again told her I never had any issues with it and only used it twice. After 30 minutes of watching her roll around in my living room, she then said that she would take it, but she only has $30. I told her again what I paid for it, and I said, I'm sorry, I won't take less than $50. She then tells me a long story about her limited income and how it's used, and I wouldn't get someone to pay that much, etc. I refuse to budge, and she grumpily goes home to get more money. I took it, gave her the mattress, she left. I praised the good Lord that I would never have contact with her ever again. But I was wrong. Over a year later, I'm at my work and my cell phone rings. I pick up the phone and here's the conversation. I say, "Hello?" The crazy lady says, "Hi, this is Karen," followed by a long pause. I respond, "I'm sorry, who?" She says, "It's Karen. You sold me an air mattress a while ago." Again, this is a year later. I respond, "Oh, okay, can I help you?" She then says, "Actually, yes you can. Once I bought the air mattress and I used it with some friends, they said it deflates a little at night." I just say, "Okay." She then says, "I think it has a hole in it. We haven't been able to use it because it deflates." Now, I wasn't sure if I should contact you, but a lot of my friends encouraged me to. At this point, I'm getting frustrated, needing to get back to work. I just say, "Is there something you need?" She then says, "Yes, I would like my money back. You sold me a defective product." I just say, "No, I didn't. I told you all the details of the product, gave you a very fair price, and you tested it out yourself before buying it. Also, I haven't heard from you for over a year." This is when Karen says, "Well, listen, none of that matters. I'm calling you today to try and give you a chance to do the right thing here." I respond, "The right thing? I haven't heard from you in a year, lady. If you had an issue in the first week I'd sold it to you, I might be willing to refund you. At this point, anything could have happened to it. It's been over 12 months. And this is what she says. She said, "Well, this is very disappointing. I really think you should refund me because there's a hole in it. I'm very disappointed." I just tell her once more, "Lady, I'm not refunding your money." I then hung up and blocked her phone number, and I'm sure she's still out there counting her pennies and trying to reach me. Jeez Louise, guys, a whole year later, she contacted OP. Like, baffling, isn't it? Also, I don't know if Karen knows, but air mattresses, well, at least the ones I've slept on, always seem to deflate a little bit overnight, so I think it's perfectly normal, I don't know. But yeah, for her to call OP a whole year later and try to guilt OP into, quote, doing the right thing by giving her a refund, lady, stop. And this person shares a similar situation that happened to them. This person says, "That happened to me. My mom wanted to sell her car and she asked me to do it. It was the classic old lady car that sat mostly in the garage. It had low miles, well maintained, etc. Blue Book at the time was about $4,000 and she said she would take $2,500 to get rid of it, so the price was excellent. After half a dozen knuckleheads came by and offered $700 or less because you'll never sell it for that price, the last lady came by to buy it for her daughter. We test drove it, checked it, all around good deal. She then pays and goes on her way. Well, over a year later, she texts me saying that it needs brake work and she wants to know if I'll reimburse her. And this person says, "This happened to me with a rug I sold. The woman messaged me asking for a refund after 3 months because it didn't match her decor anymore. I told her I was living 4 hours away and she bought it during a moving sale, so a refund wasn't possible. I told her it was final sale and I'm sorry she didn't like it. Her last message to me was, 'You are ridiculous. You never stated that it was final sale.' That is absurdly disgusting that you lied to us. I'll leave your carpet in front of your apartment building. Keep it as a gift from us to you." Again, this is why I try to avoid Facebook Marketplace at all costs, guys. Too many Karens out there. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where bad bosses are getting taught lessons by their workers, and it's absolutely wild. Go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.